Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It is Rabbi Stephen here with my 10-minute Torah. New brand, new branding, new name. Hope you like it. So, shout out to Lev Potlis, who is going to go for his bar mitzvah this weekend, this Friday and Saturday night. We're certainly looking forward to that. He's put in a lot of work, a lot of effort, and it's looking forward to seeing him get up there and become a man spiritually. In Judaism, of course, at the age of 13, a young person becomes an adult, a spiritual adult. And consider the psychology. Consider what happens when people are 13, 14. Their hormones start to rage. They grow. Their secondary sex characteristics starts coming in. So it's really, when you think about it, it's really kind of an interesting time to make somebody a spiritual adult. I mean, basically, a boy is becoming a man, a girl is becoming a woman, and when their hormones are raging and they have all these urges that are coming in, they become kind of out of control. We see how that can be. So, what better way to help them maintain control than to say, okay, here's a Torah, here's the laws, here's the rules, here's the teachings. Start learning, start living by it. And it's a good way to have what we used to call in psychology setting limits. It's kind of interesting. So this week's portion, let's move on to that, is Ki Teitze. And it's a very interesting portion. There's a lot of things going on there. Two probably of the main points is the idea of kindness. Now, it talks about the fact that, when you're on the road and you see your fellow's animal and the animal has fallen down, maybe the burden was too heavy or maybe the animal slipped, what do? You go and help. So the modern day equivalent is you see somebody stuck on the side of the road, you move over, you need a phone, you need me to call AAA, you need help changing the tire, that type of thing. It is a commandment, which means even if you don't like that particular person, even if you see them, and back then they lived in small towns, everybody pretty much knew each other. In this community, even if you don't like that person, you are still commanded to go over and help them. Interesting way to kind of build relationships, isn't it? Maybe the two of you fell out of favor, maybe there was just kind of a personality thing, but you help somebody and there's this consideration of gratitude. So what better way to bring two people together? The other part of it is within that particular chapter and that particular paragraph, they say that if you find something, you look around and you see who owns it. And if you don't see anyone who owns it, if you ask a few people and there's nobody around, nobody claims it, you take it home and you put the word out somehow. Back then, of course, you would ask other people, hey, do you know who this is, or whatever. These days, you can just put it on the internet. You can post papers, whatever it is. But you make a very concerted attempt. You work at making sure that you've done everything you possibly can to find the true owner of whatever it is you found that was lost so that you could return it to them. We've all heard the phrase, finders, keepers, losers, weepers. That doesn't exist in Judaism. You find something, you return it to the rightful person. Again, this goes to the idea, the commandment of thou shalt not steal. There's a lot of reasons why you can rationalize that and figure this is why you don't steal. But really the main reason is that, like we say in the morning in one of our prayers, Hashem gives us everything we need. If you're stealing, you're really going against God's plan, because it's God who determines what you need and gives you the tools to get it, or gives you the tools to attain it, or to work, or gives you the resources to work for it. So taking something that's not yours, even though you may just have found it and I don't know who the owner is, there's no way. No, you don't do that. You make a very concerted effort to do that. Now, there's a lot of other things in this particular passage. A lot of them are sort of PG-13, if not R-rated. The first part of the portion talks about when a a man is in battle and they're winning their war, they're conquering another people, and they see a woman of beautiful form. So what does he want to do? The man wants to take the woman for his own. The Torah recognizes that these urges, that in the heat of battle, your passions are flowing, and you become at the mercy of a lot of these urges. So it really kind of provides a way to deal with this. And the way to deal with it is that the woman has to come home with you, and the woman has to mourn for 30 days. And the woman doesn't make herself up, doesn't do the things that back then or even today women would do to beautify themselves. And then if the man still wants the woman, he makes an honest woman out of her. If he decides he doesn't, then he sends her back to her people, and it's like nothing ever happened. I mean, a lot of times when the Israelites would conquer people, they would keep become the survivors as servants. Right? This is not that case. The other part is a very controversial issue, a very controversial portion, and it talks about the wayward son. Now, this is a situation where there is a son who goes against his parents' wishes. And what he does is it talks about he steals money, he buys a lot of food, he becomes a glutton, he buys a lot of alcohol, becomes a drunk. And the implication is that as this person grows up and becomes an adult, those habits become worse. Now, consider the flow. A man finds a woman, conquers a people, takes a woman, and she is an unwilling companion. That unwilling companion, they have a son, and the man does not necessarily feel a relationship with that son because it was a forced relationship or a contrived relationship. And the son basically grows up without love, so the son doesn't have the upbringing, doesn't have the love, doesn't have the guidance to develop the right moral characteristics, so they take the wrong path. And the consequences of this is that the child, the kid, can be put to death. Now that seems very severe, almost inhumane in this day and age. The point of it is that this is put in there as a warning. There are so many regulations to get through before this can even happen. It never happened. The rabbi said this never happened, and the rabbis wouldn't even really consider it. So why is it in there? To let you know that a relationship, a marriage, should be out of love. Because if it's not out of love, there's going to be resentment, there's going to be some hard feelings. It's going to flow down to the kids, and the kids are going to suffer. We see this today. We have two people that maybe are attracted to each other, and for whatever reason, typically not the right reasons of love, they end up consummating their relationship and getting married, and then they get divorced. What is the divorce rate these days? It's over 50%, maybe 60%. And you have kids that grow up in broken relationships, or you have blended families, or you have kids that are being raised maybe by grandparents because the parents are not fit to be parents. This talks about that. By extension, this talks about the need, what's necessary, the emotional commitment to raise a proper child. Not just by Torah, but also by that love. It talks about, for example, if a man back then who had two wives, typically, a lot of times, one of the wives is more loved than the other. We saw this in Jacob. Rachel was more loved than Leah. It talks about what happens when the firstborn son is of the woman that the man didn't love as much as the other one. Well, that son still gets twice the amount. This was primogeniture. That's the official term, where the firstborn son gets the double portion. You have, let's say, 3 sons. The estate is divided up into 4. The older son gets 2, and the other 2 get the remaining quarters, right? It also talks about the fields. It talks about that if you have workers, as they're working and they get hungry, they're allowed to eat some of the crops, but only to satisfy their hunger. They're not allowed to eat more. They're not allowed to take stuff home. Some of us work in offices, and what do? They bring lunch in, right? And there's a lot of times they kind of overdo it. There's a little bit left over. You maybe want to take home for your girlfriend, your wife, your spouse, your husband, your kids, whatever it is. This is not that case. In this case, If you're picking grapes, you get hungry, you want to satisfy your thirst, you quench your hunger, you take a few grapes just to hold you over, right? So that's allowed too. And it talks about that. Talks about how if you happen to give somebody a loan or you lend them something and they're giving you something of theirs as collateral. So let's say a woman gives you her coat as collateral. She needs to use a millstone or something. At the end of the day, if that woman can't return what she borrowed, you still have to give her back that coat, because otherwise she's going to be cold. She's going to be miserable, right? So there's a lot of humanity in this particular portion. It talks about what happens in the case of war, what happens in the worst of situations when people's passions are flowing and they're thinking, kill or be killed. There are still these rules, these laws, these teachings to still guide us in a humane manner. And that's really the idea of this portion. A lot of miscellaneous laws, but they're tied together because we still have to maintain our humanity and respect for other people. So that was Rabbi Shmuel Rashbi's Rabbi Stephen's 10-Minute Torah. Again, a new brand. Look forward to seeing you in services to celebrate Lev's ascension into adulthood. And again, thanks for watching, and Shabbat Shalom.